I'm Faith, 34 years old, and for 12 straight months, my own family called me a thief, a manipulator, and a heartless woman who stole from a dying old man. My sister Brooke led the charge. My mother backed her up. Half of my relatives believed them without question. I spent an entire year drowning in voicemails, text messages, and family gatherings where people whispered behind my back, all because my grandfather left me his cabin. But here's what none of them knew. Grandpa didn't just leave me property. He left me a letter, written the day he changed his will. And in that letter, he described exactly what he heard my sister say at his 80th birthday party. Words so cruel, they broke his heart. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy this story. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, let me take you back to 14 months ago, the night I got the phone call that changed everything. The call came at 3:47 in the morning. I was halfway through a 12-hour night shift at St. Andrew's Hospital, checking vitals on a patient in room 412, when my phone buzzed in my scrub pocket. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name. Mom. My mother never called me. Not at 3 a.m. Not ever, really. I stepped into the hallway, heart already sinking. Faith. Her voice was flat, clinical. Your grandfather passed an hour ago. Come home. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. A machine beeped somewhere down the corridor, and I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. Grandpa Walter was gone. He was the only person in my family who ever truly saw me. While my parents praised Brooke for her marketing career and designer lifestyle, Grandpa would sit with me on his cabin porch and say, "You're the one who shows up, Faith. That matters more than any job title." The last time I visited him, 3 weeks before, he had held my hand with surprising strength. "You're the only one who sits with me," he'd whispered. "Remember that." I didn't understand then. I do now. I requested emergency leave and drove 4 hours through the dark. When I finally pulled into my mother's driveway at dawn, Brooke's white Lexus was already parked in the prime spot near the front door. Of course it was. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked past me, not at me. "Took you long enough," she said. "Brooke's been here since midnight." I swallowed the response that burned in my throat and stepped inside, where my sister was already discussing arrangements with our mother, as if Grandpa were a problem to be solved rather than a person to be mourned. The funeral was standing room only. Grandpa Walter had lived in this town for 63 years. He'd coached Little League, volunteered at the fire department, and lent money to neighbors who never paid him back. Everyone loved him. Everyone except, apparently, the people who should have loved him most. I stood in the back corner of the reception hall, watching my sister work the room. Brooke wore a black designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, accepting hugs and murmured condolences like a grieving princess. "She must be devastated," I heard Cousin Linda whisper to Uncle Robert. "She was always so close to Walter." Close. Brooke visited Grandpa twice in 5 years. I drove out to his cabin every single week, but I didn't correct them. What was the point? Then a warm hand touched my elbow. Aunt Margaret, my mother's younger sister, the only one who never picked sides. "I know," she said quietly, not looking at me. "I know you were the one who actually took care of him, Faith." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. "He knew too," she added. Then she squeezed my arm and disappeared back into the crowd. Later, my mother stood at the podium and gave a speech about family and legacy. She mentioned how much Brooke adored her grandfather. She talked about Sunday dinners and holiday traditions. She never said my name. Not once. I sat in the back row, hands folded in my lap, and let the tears fall silently. Not because of the oversight. I was used to being invisible in this family. I cried because Grandpa was the only one who ever made me feel seen, and now he was gone. 1 week after the funeral, we gathered in Harold Brennan's law office. Harold had been Grandpa's attorney for 30 years. A silver-haired man with kind eyes and a voice like warm honey. He'd handled Grandpa's affairs since before I was born. The office was small. My mother sat in the center chair. Brooke flanked her right side, tapping manicured nails against her designer purse. I took the seat furthest from them both. "Thank you all for coming," Harold began, adjusting his reading glasses. Walter was very specific about his wishes. He read through the standard items first. Grandpa's savings account, approximately $42,000, would be split equally between his two granddaughters, personal effects distributed according to a separate list. Then Harold paused. He looked up, directly at me. "And finally, regarding the cabin property on Miller Lake." Brooke leaned forward. My mother straightened in her chair. "Walter has bequeathed the cabin, the land, and all its contents solely and entirely to his granddaughter, Faith Sinclair." Silence. Then Brooke shot to her feet. "That's impossible," her voice cracked. "There must be a mistake. Grandpa would never—" "There is no mistake, Ms. Sinclair." Harold's tone remained calm but firm. "This will was updated 11 months before Walter's passing. It is entirely legal and reflects his explicit wishes." My mother turned to stare at me. Her eyes were ice. "You knew about this," she accused. "I didn't." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I swear I had no idea." Brooke's face twisted. "This is ridiculous. She must have—" "Ms. Sinclair," Harold cut her off. "Your grandfather was of sound mind. I witnessed the signing personally." The room felt like it was shrinking. I could barely breathe. Grandpa left me the cabin, just me. But why? The moment we stepped outside the law office, my mother grabbed my arm. "We need to talk." Her grip was iron. "Privately." She pulled me around the corner of the building, away from Harold's window. Brooke followed, heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown. "You're going to share that cabin with your sister." Mom's voice left no room for discussion. "That's what family does." I tried to pull my arm free. She held tighter. "Mom, Grandpa made his decision. His decision was wrong." She finally released me, but her glare didn't soften. "He was old, confused. You spent all that time with him. God knows what you put in his head." The accusation hit like a slap. Then Brooke stepped forward, and her entire demeanor shifted. Gone was the outrage from Harold's office. Now she wore the mask of a wounded sister, voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "Faith, I don't want to fight." She reached for my hand. "I just want us to both have memories of Grandpa. The cabin was special to all of us." I hesitated. Maybe I was being unreasonable. Maybe— "I'm not asking you to give it up entirely," Brooke continued, her tone honeyed. "Just share. Put both our names on the deed. That's fair, isn't it?" Something flickered in her eyes, something calculating. "I'll let you visit any time," I said carefully. "You can stay whenever you want, but I don't want to change the deed." Brooke's mask slipped for just a second. "Who said anything about selling?" Her voice sharpened. "I just want what's fair." And there it was. The word she'd been circling around. Selling. She didn't want memories. She didn't want Grandpa's legacy. She wanted the money. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and let the memories wash over me. The cabin on Miller Lake wasn't just a building. It was 50 years of my family's history pressed into weathered pine walls and creaking floorboards. I was 8 the first time Grandpa took me fishing off the dock. I remember the morning mist rising off the water, the way he patiently untangled my line when I cast it into the trees. "This lake taught your grandmother how to swim," he'd told me. "And right there on that porch is where I asked her to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question." Grandma passed when I was 12. I barely remember her face now, but I remember the cabin. Her quilt still hung on the beds. Her recipe cards were still tucked in the kitchen drawer. And my father. Dad died when I was 12. A car accident on a rainy night. He was only 39. But before that, some of my best memories with him happened at that cabin. He taught me to skip stones. He'd carry me on his shoulders down to the water and pretend to throw me in while I shrieked with laughter. The cabin was where Dad learned to walk, where he spent every summer of his childhood. If Brooke sold it, all of that would vanish. Some developer would tear it down, build a vacation rental, and charge tourists $300 a night to sleep where my grandmother dreamed and my father took his first steps. I couldn't let that happen. Grandpa always said, "This cabin isn't about money, Faith. It's about remembering who we are." I whispered into the dark of my empty apartment. "I won't let them take it, Grandpa. I promise." I had no idea how hard that promise would be to keep. The campaign started 3 days later. At first, it was just my mother. A text every morning, a voicemail every night. I didn't raise you to be selfish, Faith. Your grandfather would be ashamed of how you're acting. Call me back. We need to settle this like adults. Then Brooke joined in. Her messages were longer, more calculated. I can't believe you're really going to let a cabin destroy this family. Is property really worth more than your own sister? By the second week, the extended family had mobilized. Cousin Linda, Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia from Ohio, whom I'd met exactly twice in my life. Faith, honey, I heard about the cabin situation. You know, family is more important than real estate. 7 or 8 messages a day, sometimes more. I stopped counting after the first month. At work, I could barely focus. My supervisor pulled me aside after I nearly gave a patient the wrong medication. Faith, is everything okay? You seem somewhere else lately. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to explain that my family was slowly dismantling my sanity one text message at a time, but what could she do? I'm fine, I lied. Just tired. At night, I'd stare at my phone and watch the notifications pile up. Each one was a tiny knife. Brooke. Mom cried all night because of you. Happy now? Mom. Your grandmother would weep if she saw what you've become. Cousin Linda. I always thought you were the sweet one. Guess I was wrong. The worst part? Some nights I believed them. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was tearing the family apart over a building. Maybe Grandpa had made a mistake. Then I'd remember his hand in mine, his voice in my ear. You're the only one who sits with me, Faith. And I'd hold on for one more day. The call came at 11:47 p.m. I had just finished a double shift. 12 hours on my feet, 3 emergencies, 1 patient coding on the table. I was so tired my hands shook as I unlocked my apartment door. My phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer. But guilt, that old familiar companion, made me swipe accept. Faith. Her voice was thick, trembling. I can't sleep. This is killing me. I leaned against my kitchen counter, too exhausted to sit down. Mom, it's almost midnight. Your sister is falling apart. She cut me off. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. She loved your grandfather just as much as you did, and you're treating her like a stranger. I pressed my palm against my forehead. Mom, I offered to share the memories. I said she could visit any time. Listen to yourself. Her voice rose. You sound like a lawyer. When did you become so cold? When did you stop caring about your own family? The words landed like punches, each one deliberate, each one designed to wound. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, I managed. I'm trying to honor what Grandpa wanted. What Grandpa wanted. She laughed bitterly. You think you knew him better than his own daughter? Better than Brooke? Yes, I thought. I did. But I didn't say it. Silence stretched between us. Then my mother's voice dropped to something cold and final. I don't know who you are anymore, Faith. Your father would be ashamed of you. The line went dead. I stood there in my dark kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Then I slid down against the cabinet and cried until I had nothing left. She always knew exactly where to strike, and she never, ever missed. 2 weeks later, my mother summoned me to her house. A family meeting, she called it. Just the 3 of us, to talk like civilized people. I should have known better. I walked into her living room to find Brooke already seated in the armchair, legs crossed, expression perfectly composed. My mother stood by the fireplace like a general surveying a battlefield. Sit down, Faith. Mom gestured to the couch. Let's be adults about this. I sat. I waited. Brooke spoke first, her voice dripping with false reasonableness. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want fairness. Then respect Grandpa's wishes, I said quietly. His wishes were influenced. Brooke leaned forward. He wasn't thinking clearly at the end. My stomach dropped. Are you saying he was mentally incompetent? Nobody's saying that, Mom interjected quickly. We're just saying, you spent so much time with him, you could have... Could have what? I kept my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. Manipulated a dying man? Is that what you think I did? Silence. Brooke looked away. Mom pressed her lips together. No one's accusing you of anything, Brooke finally said. but her eyes told a different story. I stood up. You are accusing me. You've been accusing me for weeks. I grabbed my purse. Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing, and if you can't accept that, then this conversation is over. Faith, Mom stepped toward me. No. I held up my hand. I've spent my whole life being the one who gives in, the one who keeps the peace. Not this time. I walked out the front door without looking back. My hands didn't stop shaking until I was halfway home, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than defeat. I felt angry. 3 days later, I drove to Aunt Margaret's house. She was the only person in my family who hadn't joined the crusade against me, the only one who still answered my calls without an agenda. She lived in a small bungalow on the edge of town, surrounded by rose bushes she'd been cultivating for 30 years. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already standing on the porch with 2 cups of tea. "You look terrible," she said matter-of-factly. "Come inside." We sat in her kitchen, sunlight streaming through lace curtains, and for a while, neither of us spoke. Then Margaret set down her cup. "Faith, there's something I need to tell you." I looked up. "Last year I helped your grandfather install something at the cabin." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "A security system. Cameras." "Cameras?" I frowned. Grandpa hated technology. "He did, but he said there'd been some strangers wandering near the property, asked me to help him set it up." She met my eyes. "But I always thought he had another reason." My heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" Margaret shook her head slowly. "I don't know exactly, but your grandfather was sharp, Faith. Sharper than anyone gave him credit for. He saw things. He noticed things." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You should go to the cabin. There might be something there he left for you." "Like what?" "I don't know." She released my hand. "But Walter loved you more than anyone in this family, and he wasn't the type to leave you defenseless." I drove home that night with her words echoing in my head. Cameras. Something he left for you, not defenseless. What had Grandpa seen? What did he want me to find? I drove to the cabin the following Saturday. It was my first time there since Grandpa died. I'd been avoiding it, I realized, afraid of what it would feel like to walk through those rooms without him. But Aunt Margaret's words wouldn't leave me alone. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered. Pine walls weathered silver by decades of sun and rain. The porch where Grandpa used to sit with his morning coffee. The dock stretching out over Miller Lake like an arm reaching for the horizon. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and old books. Grandma's quilt still covered the beds. The kitchen still held her recipes in a tin box by the stove. I found myself drifting toward Grandpa's study, a small room at the back of the cabin where he'd spent hours reading, writing, thinking. His desk sat by the window, overlooking the lake. I lowered myself into his chair, running my fingers over the worn wood. Then I opened the top drawer. Papers, old receipts, a faded photograph of Grandma, and beneath it all, a white envelope with my name written in Grandpa's careful handwriting. For Faith, to be opened when you need strength. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, handwritten, dated 11 months before his death, the same date Harold mentioned when the will was changed. I began to read. "My dear Faith, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and they're giving you a hard time about the cabin. I knew they would. That's why I'm writing this now, while my mind is still clear and my hand still steady. There's something you need to know about your sister, something I saw with my own eyes." I stopped breathing. What did he see? 2 months after the will reading, Aunt Patricia hosted a birthday dinner at her house. I almost didn't go, but staying away would only give them more ammunition. "See? She's avoiding the family. Guilty conscience." So I went. I arrived 20 minutes late. My shift at the hospital ran over, and the moment I stepped through Patricia's front door, I felt it. That particular silence that falls when everyone has been talking about you. Brooke stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by cousins and aunts. She paused mid-sentence when she saw me. "Faith." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We were just discussing the cabin situation." I kept my voice calm. "Were you?" "I was explaining to everyone how you refused to even consider sharing." Brooke tilted her head, playing the wounded sister to perfection. "After everything Grandpa did for both of us." I felt 20 pairs of eyes turn toward me, judging, waiting. I'm honoring Grandpa's wishes, I said quietly. He made his decision. Brooke laughed, a brittle, practiced sound. See, she doesn't care about family. She turned to the crowd. She only cares about real estate. A few people chuckled. Someone whispered something I couldn't hear. Cousin Linda stepped forward. Faith, honey, is it true you're keeping the whole cabin? Grandpa left it to me. Yes. And you won't share with your own sister? I opened my mouth to explain, about the visits, about the memories, about what the cabin meant. But Brooke cut me off. She's changed, Brooke announced to the room. Money changed her. The words hit like stones. I grabbed my purse. I didn't trust myself to speak without crying. I should go, I managed. I left before they could see the tears. But I heard Brooke's voice follow me out. See what I mean? That night I sat on my apartment floor and read Grandpa's letter from beginning to end. The first part was gentle. He wrote about his love for the cabin, his memories with Grandma, his hopes that I would preserve it for future generations. Then the tone shifted. Faith, at my 80th birthday party, something happened that I never told anyone. It was around 9 o'clock. The party was winding down. My back was hurting, so I stepped outside to get some air. I walked around to the side porch, the one facing the lake. That's when I heard voices. It was Brooke. She was talking to that friend of hers, the blonde one with the loud laugh. They were standing by the railing smoking cigarettes. They didn't know I was there. I heard Brooke say. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. She said, God, how much longer is he going to hang on? This place is worth at least $350,000. Her friend laughed. Then Brooke said, and Faith, I will never forget these words. I wish he would just die already so we can sell this place. I stood there in the dark, listening to my own granddaughter wish me dead. I didn't confront her. What would be the point? But the next week, I called Harold and changed my will. The cabin is yours, Faith. Not because Brooke doesn't deserve it, though she doesn't, but because you were the only one who ever saw me as a person. Not a burden, not a price tag, just your grandfather. P.S. Check the security system. I recorded everything. I set the letter down. My chest felt hollow, empty. Grandpa heard her. He stood there in the dark and heard his own granddaughter wish him dead. And he never said a word. The next morning I drove back to the cabin. I called Aunt Margaret on the way. The security system, I said. Where does it store the footage? She was quiet for a moment, then. There's an external hard drive. He kept it in the closet of his study, inside a shoebox. I found it exactly where she said. A small black device, dusty but intact. I plugged it into my laptop with trembling fingers. The interface was simple, organized by date. I scrolled back to Grandpa's 81st birthday, found the exterior cameras, found the timestamp 9:47 p.m. I pressed play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The side porch came into view. Two figures stood by the railing, cigarettes glowing orange in the dark. Brooke and her friend Jessica. I turned up the volume. Honestly, the upkeep on this place must be insane. Jessica's voice crackled through the speakers. Tell me about it. Brooke exhaled smoke. And he just sits here, deteriorating while this property loses value every year. Can't you just talk to him? Brooke snorted. He's stubborn. Won't sell. Won't even discuss it. A pause. Then Jessica. What's the place worth? At least $350,000, maybe more with the lakefront. Damn. Another pause. Then Brooke's voice, clear as glass. God, I wish he would just die already so we can finally cash out. Jessica laughed. Morbid, but fair. I'm serious. The longer he holds on, the more money we're losing. I stopped the video. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had settled inside me. Something cold and certain. I backed up the video onto a USB drive, then another, then emailed a copy to myself. Brooke thought she could erase the truth. She had no idea who she was dealing with. 1 week later, I got a call from the cabin's nearest neighbor, Mr. Henderson. Faith, it's Bill Henderson from down the road. His voice was concerned. I saw someone at your grandfather's cabin earlier. Didn't look like you. My blood ran cold. What did they look like? Blonde, drove a white car, fancy looking. Brooke. I called the police and drove down immediately. By the time I arrived, a deputy was already there, taking notes. No signs of forced entry, he told me. But someone definitely went through the place. Drawers pulled out, closets ransacked. I walked inside, my heart pounding. The study was destroyed, papers scattered everywhere, books pulled from shelves, and the top drawer of Grandpa's desk, the one where I'd found the envelope, was empty. The original letter was gone. I stood in the middle of the chaos and felt a laugh building in my chest. Not a happy laugh, something darker. Brooke had come looking for the letter. She must have known, somehow, that Grandpa had written something down. Maybe she'd glimpsed him writing it and thought he was just rambling old man nonsense. Now she knew better. The deputy was watching me with concern. "Ma'am, is anything valuable missing?" "Just a letter," I said. "A personal letter from my grandfather." "Do you know who might have taken it?" I met his eyes. "I have a pretty good idea." He nodded slowly. "We'll file a report. But without proof." "I understand." I waited until he left. Then I walked to my car and opened the glove compartment. Inside, a photocopied version of the letter and a USB drive with the video. Brooke thought she'd won, but she'd only stolen the original. I'd been a nurse for 12 years. Rule number 1, always keep backup records. 1 year after Grandpa's death, my mother organized a memorial dinner. "To honor Walter's memory," she announced in the group text. "All family members welcome." 23 people confirmed attendance. Aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins, the whole Sinclair clan gathered under one roof. I knew what it really was, another opportunity for Brooke and Mom to paint me as the villain, but I went anyway. I wore a simple black dress. In my coat pocket, I carried a photocopied letter and a USB drive. The dinner was at my mother's house. When I arrived, the driveway was already full of cars. I could hear laughter and conversation through the windows. I paused on the front steps, hand on the doorknob. This was it. 1 year of accusations, 1 year of whispered insults and family cold shoulders. 1 year of being called heartless, selfish, a thief. Tonight, it ended. One way or another. I walked inside. The living room was packed. Candles flickered on the mantel beside a framed photo of Grandpa. People balanced plates of food and glasses of wine. The air smelled like roast chicken and expensive perfume. Brooke spotted me first. She stood near the fireplace, looking confident and relaxed. Why wouldn't she? She'd destroyed the letter. She thought she was safe. My mother approached me before I could take off my coat. "Faith," her voice carried across the room. Several conversations paused. "After a whole year, have you finally reconsidered your position on the cabin?" I met her eyes. Then I looked at Brooke, who was watching with barely concealed smugness. "I've thought about it a lot, actually," I said calmly. "In fact, there's something Grandpa wanted everyone to know." Brooke's smile flickered. "Since we're all here together," I continued, "I think now is the perfect time. Now I want to pause here for a moment. If you've ever been in a situation like this, where your own family turns against you, where you're holding a truth that could change everything, you know exactly what Faith is feeling right now. What would you do? Would you read the letter? Or would you walk away and keep the peace? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button. It really helps. Now, back to the memorial dinner. I reached into my coat pocket and withdrew the letter. The room went quiet. "Grandpa left me a letter," I said, my voice steady. "He wrote it the same day he changed his will. I found it at the cabin, in his desk drawer." Brooke's face drained of color. "Where did you—" "Interesting story, actually." I looked at her directly. "Someone broke into the cabin last week and stole the original, but I'd already made copies." My mother stepped forward. "Faith, what is this about?" "It's about the truth, Mom." I unfolded the paper. "Something Grandpa wanted all of you to hear." I began to read. "My dear Faith, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and they're giving you a hard time about the cabin." I read through the beginning. The room stayed silent. Then I reached the part about the birthday party. I heard Brooke say, God, how much longer is he going to hang on? This place is worth at least $350K. Gasps. Someone dropped a wine glass. It shattered against the floor, but no one moved to clean it up. Then Brooke said, and Faith, I will never forget these words. I wish he would just die already so we can sell this place. Brooke shot to her feet. That's a lie. Her voice cracked. She made it up. She forged that letter. I folded the paper calmly. I also have a video. Grandpa installed security cameras at the cabin last year. The conversation is recorded. Dead silence. My mother's face was gray. Aunt Margaret had her hand pressed over her mouth. Uncle Robert was staring at Brooke like he'd never seen her before. I didn't want to do this, I said quietly. But you left me no choice. Brooke was shaking. Mom, she whispered. Mom, tell them she's lying. But our mother said nothing at all. The silence lasted an eternity. Then my mother turned to face Brooke. Her expression was something I'd never seen before. Not anger, exactly. Something worse. Devastation. Tell me she's lying. Mom's voice barely rose above a whisper. Look me in the eye and tell me you never said those words. Brooke's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was stressed that night. Her voice trembled. I didn't mean it literally. I was just venting. Venting? Uncle Robert cut in, his face reddening. You wished your own grandfather dead, for money. How do you not mean that literally? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Brooke? Aunt Margaret stepped forward. Because Walter asked me to help install those cameras. He told me he'd seen something that broke his heart. I didn't understand then. I do now. Brooke looked around the room wildly, searching for an ally. Every face was stone. Her fiancé, Craig, stood near the back of the room. He'd been quiet throughout the evening, but now he set down his glass with a decisive click. I think I need some air, he said flatly. He walked out the front door without looking at Brooke. Craig. She moved to follow him. Let him go, my mother said. Her voice had aged 20 years in 2 minutes. Let him go, Brooke. Then Mom turned to me. Her eyes were wet. I defended her for a year, she said quietly. A whole year. I called you names. I said terrible things. And this whole time, she couldn't finish. Brooke stood alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by family who now looked at her like a stranger. For the first time in my life, I watched my sister have no one on her side. I wish I could say it felt good. It didn't. I stood up slowly, gathering my coat. The room remained frozen. 22 pairs of eyes fixed on me, waiting to see what I would do next. I kept my voice low, calm, the same voice I used when delivering difficult news to patients' families. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I looked around the room. I came here because for 12 months I've been called a thief, a manipulator, and a heartless woman who took advantage of a dying man. No one spoke. Grandpa left me the cabin because he knew I would protect it. Because I was the one who visited him every week. Because I was the one who sat with him when he couldn't sleep. My voice caught slightly. And because he knew that some people only saw him as a price tag. I turned to Brooke. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. You will always be my sister, I said quietly. Nothing changes that. But you are not welcome at the cabin. Not anymore. Brooke's face crumpled. Then I looked at my mother. Mom, I love you. I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval, trying to be good enough. I took a breath, but I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I need you to see me, really see me, not as the disappointing daughter, not as Brooke's shadow, as Faith. My mother's lips trembled. She reached out a hand toward me, then dropped it. I need time, I said. We all do. I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the knob. The cabin will stay in the family. Anyone who wants to visit and honor Grandpa's memory is welcome. I didn't turn around. But from now on, I decide who that includes. I walked out into the cold night air. I didn't look back. The fallout came faster than I expected. 3 days after the memorial dinner, Aunt Margaret called with news. Craig broke off the engagement, she told me. Packed his things and left Brooke's apartment yesterday. I closed my eyes. How is she? Devastated. Blaming everyone except herself. Margaret paused. Faith, don't feel guilty. This isn't your fault. I know. But knowing and feeling were different things. The family had fractured. Texts flew back and forth. Some people defending Brooke. She was just stressed. Others horrified by what she'd said. Who says that about their own grandfather? My mother hadn't spoken to anyone since the dinner. According to Margaret, she'd locked herself in her bedroom and refused phone calls. A week later, my phone buzzed with messages I never expected. Cousin Linda. Faith, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I had no idea. Uncle Robert. Your grandfather was right about you. I should have listened. Even Aunt Patricia from Ohio. I owe you an apology. We all believed the wrong person. I read each message with mixed emotions. Gratitude, sadness, a strange hollowness. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? To be believed, to be vindicated. But victory felt nothing like I'd imagined. My family had broken apart. My sister was alone. My mother was lost in grief and shame. I'd won. So why did it feel like everyone had lost? That night, I sat in my apartment with a cup of cold tea and stared out the window at nothing. I didn't want this, Grandpa, I whispered to the dark. I just wanted the truth. But the truth, I was learning, had a cost, and now we were all paying it. 2 weeks after the memorial dinner, Brooke texted me. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me, the part that still remembered us as little girls building sandcastles at the lake, wanted to hope. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Brooke was already there when I arrived. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. A stranger would never recognize the polished marketing executive from 3 months ago. I sat down across from her. Neither of us ordered anything. Faith, her voice was raspy. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I blinked. What I've done to you? Craig left me. The whole family thinks I'm a monster. Aunt Patricia uninvited me from Thanksgiving. Her eyes filled with tears. My entire life is falling apart, and it's your fault. I let out a slow breath. Brooke, I didn't make you say those words about Grandpa. I was venting. She slapped her palm on the table. Everyone says things they don't mean. It was one comment. At his birthday party, I kept my voice level. You wished him dead while he was 50 feet away, and then you spent 11 months pretending nothing happened. I didn't know he heard. Does that make it better? Silence. Brooke's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, might show some genuine remorse. Instead, she whispered, You ruined everything. I stood up, left enough cash on the table to cover a coffee I never ordered. When you're ready to take responsibility, not for the consequences, but for what you actually did, you know where to find me. I walked out without looking back. Some bridges can only be rebuilt by the person who burned them. If you've ever had to set boundaries with someone you love, family, friends, anyone who crossed a line they shouldn't have, then you know this isn't easy. It's not about winning. It's about protecting yourself while leaving the door open for real change. Comment boundaries below if you understand what Faith is going through. And if this story is hitting close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Okay, let's see what happens next. 1 month later, my mother called. I want to see you, she said. No preamble, no small talk. Please come home. I drove to her house the next morning, the place where I'd grown up feeling invisible, the place I'd fled from a year ago with tears streaming down my face. Mom was waiting in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd once baked birthday cakes and years later told me I was tearing the family apart. She looked older, smaller. The sharp edges I remembered had softened into something fragile. Sit down, she said quietly. Please. I sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Then my mother said, I was wrong. I looked up. I was so wrong, Faith. Her voice cracked. I wanted to believe Brooke because admitting the truth was too painful. She was always the one I understood. The one who was like me. She pressed a hand to her mouth. I didn't see you. I never really saw you. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Your father loved that cabin, she continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. He spent every summer there as a boy. When he died, I couldn't bear to visit anymore. It hurt too much. She looked at me. But you went. Every week you went. And I resented you for it. Mom, let me finish. She reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry. For all of it. For taking Brooke's side. For saying your father would be ashamed. For never telling you that I'm proud of who you are. I was crying now too. I need time, I managed. But I want to try. I want that too, she whispered. More than anything. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 2 months after the memorial dinner, I drove to the cabin alone. It was a Saturday in early October. The leaves had turned gold and crimson, carpeting the ground in color. The lake was glass still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. I parked in the gravel driveway and sat there for a while, just looking. This was mine now. Not because I'd taken it from anyone, but because Grandpa had chosen to give it to me. I walked up the porch steps, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The cabin embraced me with familiar smells, cedar, old books, the faint trace of Grandma's lavender sachets. Dust motes floated in the afternoon light. I moved through the rooms slowly. The kitchen where Grandpa made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The living room where he taught me to play chess. The porch where he'd sit for hours, watching the lake. Finally, I went to his study. I sat down in his chair, opened the drawer where I'd first found the letter. Empty now, but not really. I pulled out my copy of the letter and read the last paragraph one more time. The cabin is yours, Faith, not because Brooke doesn't deserve it, though she doesn't, but because you were the only one who ever saw me as a person, not a burden, not a price tag, just your grandfather. I pressed the paper to my chest. I kept my promise, I whispered to the empty room. I saved it. For you. For Dad. For Grandma. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. The lake lapped gently against the dock. And somewhere, I like to think, Grandpa was smiling. I stayed at the cabin until the stars came out. For the first time in over a year, I felt at peace. The following weekend, Aunt Margaret came to visit. We sat on the porch in Grandpa's old rocking chairs, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill. Steam rose from our cups of tea. The lake stretched out before us, painted orange and pink by the setting sun. He would be so proud of you, Margaret said softly. I shook my head. I don't know. I tore the family apart. No, Faith. She turned to look at me. The truth did that, and the truth needed to come out. We rocked in silence for a while. A loon called somewhere across the water. What are your plans for this place? Margaret asked. I'd been thinking about that a lot. I want to keep it exactly as it is, I said. Open for family, for anyone who wants to come and remember Grandpa the way he deserved to be remembered. Even Diane? Especially Mom. I took a sip of tea. We're working on things. It's slow. But she came here last week, first time since Dad died. Margaret smiled. That's something. She cried for 2 hours, but she said it felt like finally being able to breathe again. We watched the sun sink below the tree line. You know, Margaret said, your grandfather set boundaries too. Did you know that? I looked at her. 1987, his brother asked him for money to cover gambling debts. Walter said no. They didn't speak for 10 years. She met my eyes. But Walter never regretted it. He said some things are worth protecting, even if it costs you. I smiled slightly. Sounds like boundaries run in the family. The best things do. We stayed on that porch until the stars came out, just like Grandpa used to. Some legacies aren't about property at all. 6 months after the memorial dinner, my life looked completely different. I still worked at St. Andrew's, still pulled 12-hour shifts and held patients' hands when they were scared. But now, every weekend, I drove to the cabin. Sometimes I went alone. I'd read on the porch, fish off the dock, fall asleep to the sound of wind in the pines. Sometimes Mom came with me. Our conversations were still careful, still healing, but she laughed now. She talked about Dad without crying. She even brought some of his old fishing gear out of storage. He would have wanted it here, she said, where it belongs. Other family members started visiting too. Uncle Robert brought his grandkids to swim in the lake. Cousin Linda helped me repair the dock. Even Aunt Patricia made the trip from Ohio. I judged you unfairly, she told me. I hope you can forgive me someday. I already have, I said. And I meant it. Brooke never reached out again. According to Margaret, she moved to another city, started over somewhere no one knew her name. I hoped she found peace, genuinely hoped it. But I'd stopped waiting by the phone. Some relationships can't be rebuilt until the other person is ready to do the work. One Sunday afternoon, I hung a small wooden sign by the cabin door. I'd carved it myself, letter by letter. Where love lives, memories stay. I stepped back and looked at my work. This cabin held 50 years of my family's history. Grandma's laughter, Dad's first steps, Grandpa's quiet wisdom, and now, finally, my own story. Not the story of the daughter who was overlooked, not the thief, not the villain, just Faith, the one who stayed, the one who was seen. It was almost sunset when I settled into Grandpa's rocking chair one last time. The lake was gold. The trees were black silhouettes against a burning sky. Somewhere nearby, a woodpecker tapped its evening rhythm. I thought about the past 18 months, about that phone call at 3:47 a.m., the funeral where no one said my name, the will reading that turned my world upside down, the endless texts, the sleepless nights, the moment I almost believed I was the villain they said I was. And then the letter, the truth, the dinner where everything changed. I thought about Brooke, somewhere out there starting over. About Mom, finally learning to see me. About all the family members who had apologized, reconnected, rebuilt. I thought about Grandpa. You knew, I said to the empty air. Didn't you? You knew they would come after me. You knew I'd need proof. The wind picked up slightly, rustling through the leaves like a whisper. You didn't just leave me a cabin, Grandpa. You left me permission. Permission to stop shrinking myself for people who would never appreciate it. Permission to protect what matters. Permission to be seen, finally, as who I really am. I closed my eyes and let the evening wash over me. A year ago, I would have given anything to go back in time, to avoid the pain, the accusations, the family fractures. Now, I wouldn't change a thing. Not because it was easy, but because on the other side of all that pain, I found something I'd been searching for my whole life, myself, the woman who stands up, the woman who tells the truth, the woman who sets boundaries, not out of anger, but out of love. Grandpa saw her before I did, but now, finally, I see her too. If you're still here, listening to my story, I want to tell you something. Maybe you're going through the same thing right now. Maybe your family has turned against you for standing your ground. Maybe you've been called selfish for setting a boundary. Maybe you're lying awake at night wondering if you're the bad guy. You're not alone. I spent 34 years being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who never made waves. And you know what it got me? Overlooked, dismissed, blamed for things I didn't do. It took losing my grandfather to find my voice. Here's what I learned. 1. Silent kindness is eventually seen. Not always by the people you want to notice, but the right people, the ones who matter. They see it. They remember. 2. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect. And it's not just for you. It's for the relationship too. A relationship without boundaries isn't love. It's exploitation. 3. The truth can hurt, but living in lies hurts more. Sometimes you have to burn things down before you can rebuild them stronger. Grandpa didn't just leave me a cabin. He left me a lesson. Don't let anyone take that from you. He wasn't talking about property. He was talking about my sense of self, my worth, my right to be seen. Don't let anyone take that from you either. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And if you have a story of your own, about family, about boundaries, about standing up for yourself when no one else would, share it in the comments. I read every single one. Check the description for more stories like this one. And remember, you deserve to be seen. Until next time.